Sahana Vavatu, Sahanao Bunaktu, Sahaviryam Karavavahai, Tejasvina Vadhitamastu, Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Karma yoga ultimately will be better for most people because if you're, friction causing and, that friction is happening to you, then you have to kind of solve these things. And that's going to, sharpen up your instrument. Otherwise, if you leave the instrument alone, then that instrument keeps getting blunter and blunter. So the question then is, how do I keep sharpening up my instrument without constantly, having to dedicate my life to sharpening it up? And the simple answer is convert every happening in your life as an opportunity to look into yourself, to change your responses, and to carry yourself, with a composure and a sense of, certain kind of direction in life. And so this thereby becomes a way to live according to Krishna. And he just wants to now in verse 6, furthermore, make it a little bit more clear in case you're having some, push and pull around sannyasa. He wants to make it explicitly clear the sannyasa is indeed a difficult path. If you choose the path of this renunciate, where you're exclusively into self-knowledge and you just say, I'm not going to be, doing friendships or no relationships, or you just deliberately minimize everything for the sake of self-knowledge, which is a common thing. It's very tempting to do that. You just say, in the name of self-knowledge, I'm not going to be very involved in life, right? You may not be wearing an ochre robe, but still there's this idea that you just simplify life sometimes too much for the sake of self-knowledge. Now, Krishna says, that may not be very wise. And then he says in verse 6, why? Sanyasastu mahabaho dukkam aptum ayogataha yoga yukto munir brahma nachirena dhigachati.
Renunciation of action, Arjuna, the mighty armed, is difficult to accomplish without karma yoga. Whereas one who is committed to a life of karma yoga and is capable of reasoning gains Brahman quickly.
Thank you, David. Okay, so this is explicitly stating, reassuring that sannyasa is again tempting because we always want path of least resistance, right? So we try to remove a lot of friction in our life. But actually, friction is good if you look at it in the right manner, right? Otherwise, it becomes just a burden. So suppose that you take on sannyasa and you don't have enough life experience. So then what happens is you're carrying these burdens and patterns that are unresolved in you. And these patterns will distort your knowledge. By the time you have to accept that the world is Ishvara alone, then you will still have something against that. Like, well, what about wars? What about this? What about that? So the mind's always trying to exclude something that it doesn't like from the vision of the whole. So until you look at everything as an expression of divinity, until then, the mind will have a hard time accepting this vision that all that is here is Ishvara. So that's the first issue with taking sannyasa prematurely. You didn't have enough life experience. You didn't fall down enough. You didn't get insulted enough. You didn't get enough chances to kind of get back up and see that you're actually okay. So every time we fall, when we get back up, it builds confidence. You develop a sense of self-reassurance in you that you are able to make it through life. So that's the first thing that you might miss out on. The second is, suppose that you say, I want sannyasa because, and then I ask you why. And you say, well, because self-knowledge is the highest purpose of life. So naturally, the mind will justify and it will rationalize. But then if you dig a little bit deeper, then you will see that they're actually disenchanted with life. Okay, so they're not able to cope with such an immense, overwhelming life and things and demands and tension and all these responsibilities. And so you sort of just kind of turn yourself off from life. And so, in other words, there's a great dislike for life. And on the basis of my dislike, for that reason, I say I'm going to become a hermit. And so, again, we need to catch ourselves so we're not tricking ourselves, because it's very easy to self-deceive oneself and then announce to the world how I'm a wise renunciate and self-knowledge is the highest purpose. But actually, you're just trying to, cope. So sooner or later, what will happen? Suppose you engage in these. Well, luckily, Ishvara will, get you back. See, you cannot cheat Ishvara. Ishvara knows exactly where you are. Somebody else may look at you and they think you're, like this, and, you're very sophisticated. But Ishvara knows, why you're doing what you're doing, knows all your intentions, and you cannot get away from Ishvara. Therefore, Ishvara will always get you back on track eventually. And Krishna, he puts this in his own words. He says, therefore, dukkham aptum ayogataha. So in other words, without the maturity of karma yoga, without going out and, in the friction of the world, without that, sannyasa is very difficult. And the second reason is, suppose you take the path of sannyasa and you realize now that you're not really this person who wants to study 24/7. You really need a little bit of gossip sometimes, drama in your life, a little bit here and there. You need some, shows on TV. And so you're seeing yourself as a human being who's genuinely having a reason to be in this world. But then you're carrying this identity that I'm supposed to be a person who studies. So that's now you're living in this study mode, but in a state of conflict. So that's another reason. So you have to look at what do you generally, how are you as a person generally, and then you honor that as a person. So we don't need to pretend to be somebody else who you genuinely are not. So therefore, Krishna is not saying you should become this and that. He's just saying, look at yourself as a person and honor who you are and follow that path. And that will take you a long way. And just, optimize it in the light of this knowledge. The third reason why sannyasa could be difficult is, you see, if a sannyasa is technically, you're by yourself a lot and you spend a lot of time on your own. Now, if your thoughts are not that healthy, then you are spending a lot of time with unhealthy thoughts. And unhealthy thoughts 24/7 become hard to deal with, right? Because you're only listening to one kind of thought. But with karma yoga, at least with other people, you're being soothed by other people's thoughts. And so you're able to exchange and learn and grow that way. You see, we think sometimes, and it's very tempting. Suppose you're in a busy kind of family environment and you have kids and you have pets and it's demandful. It's very easy to think about the grass is greener on the other side, right? Because you really think that if I just get peace for like one day or 1 week, my life will be so much better. However, even if you come to that place, then you might not like your thoughts very much, because you close your eyes now, you got all the space in the world, and all this unresolved stuff starts to come out, right? This polluted ideas and these unresolved issues. And you close your eyes like in Vipassana or retreat. And just that moment when you want to be alone, finally, that's ironically when all the stuff starts to come out. Now, the proportion of stuff and complaints that we have in reference to the world is a proportion to how many unresolved distortions I'm carrying in my mind. So see, it's very easy. We say the world is like this, it's like that. The people are like, the prime minister is like that. The government is doing this. He should be doing, or we should change the government or the president. But actually, I dare to, challenge. How is your life? What's going on in your life? And could your life be a reflection of, what you are projecting towards the country? And usually the answer is yes. So what I project towards the country and the amount of discontent that I have towards people is the amount of discontent and distortions that I'm carrying in my mind. So it's really just a mirror. The world becomes a mirror, in American, a mirror, or Australian, a mirror, for you to look at where you stand, where you are. So that way, sometimes even in India, which my teacher has reported, so she lives in India, so I know it's true. There are sannyasis who have taken the yoga robe, And because they haven't looked at their inner stuff, they will, ask for alms, for bhiksha, and they will be invited inside the home. And naturally, the person wants to give them, out of love. But then the sannyasi will, say, no, I need more of this, less of that. I don't like this. And so it's like you're demanding. It's a little bit inappropriate. And another kind of sannyasi, now these are very small number. There's always that small number. So I'm not at all generalizing. Another example that I was told, where if you don't touch their feet, they get very disturbed because there's a certain kind of pride that you're carrying, which is really interesting because spirituality is not supposed to be about being a demanding person. It's supposed to be actually being a humble person and not being very, you're supposed to have resolved your stuff. So that's what the whole journey is about. But the point is, we can see, even if you take sannyas, the yearning for this human connection and human validation is so strong that it's not easy to let go of. Even if you take on a so-called title called Mr. or Mrs. or sannyasi or etc., that yearning is very strong. And so, which is fine, right? We all have that yearning. But as I said last week, what the problem is self-deception. That is when you say, in the name of self-knowledge, in the name of the truth, I am independent and I can take care of myself and I truly don't need anyone. But actually, if you look at those minute things, those challenges and frictions, you actually respond like everyone else. So thereby we can see that no matter what path you take, still work is required to not, kind of get sidetracked. Another challenge with sannyasa is, suppose you have this title and you're wearing this title, or teacher or sannyasi or professor and so on. And inside you, you know that, people are looking up to you and you feel like you don't deserve that because you know that you got a lot of work to do on your own. So that becomes another inner battle to work through. So this means that now I, have to put up this mask in front of people, but inside I know that I'm actually just like everyone else. I got a long way to go. And so the person ends up, actually suffering, right, silently. Whereas karma yoga, he says, if you are a householder, is there any pressure on you? Do you have any pressures? Do you have any sort of, I mean, you do a little bit, but you don't have as much as a sannyasi because you don't have any titles to carry. So you can scream, you can get angry, you can say, you can apologize, you can, show your full emotional roller coaster because you're a householder. So for that reason, if you use and you look at your responses, you reach Brahman quickly. Why? Because you're having a constant feedback loop that people are able to share with you. Whereas if you're a sannyasi, then right, you don't have as many people to give you that feedback. Just letting us know where do you stand, karma yoga or sannyasi. So based on that, you can now make a firmer decision. You can say, I'm a karma yogi, I'm a householder, and I can now live fully that role. It reminds me actually, once I was never into Vedic astrology, and but I know that my whole family lives a long time. They all live like 90 plus. So by that, I went by and I said, I will live a long time. However, there was a moment in me that said, I really would like some system to confirm that. I'm just curious. So I took a Vedic astrology reading on birth and lifespan. And it confirmed, it says you will live a uh, full life. And I said, what is a full life? It can be anything. A full life means 80 plus. And I was like, okay, if it's 80 plus, then I am satisfied. I can, walk away and I can now engage fully in my work. I don't have to worry about, 60 or 70. Now it's a small thing, but it actually, for me, made a big difference. And what it did was it allowed me to live my role fully, even more than before, even though I already knew intellectually that you most likely live a long time. So in that same way, when you acknowledge that you're a grihasta or a karma yogi, and you say, I'm not going to be this different role, there's no more doubts, then there's something in you that can shift. And you can say, now, having heard that Krishna has clearly shared both views, I can fully live as a householder. I don't have to pretend to be this wise, renunciate, who's a hermit, who's, getting away from the world. I'm going to be in the environment. And so that makes you a lot more real as a person.
Yeah, no, it's just contemplating on what you said before. Being a sannyasi is harder, stressful, to remain calm and things like that. But as a householder, it's easier to let go your emotions. But actually, I find it's the other way around, because a sannyasi's life has got the conducive situation for them. They got very controlled situation. Whereas a householder, yes, you're right. Sometimes you want to scream, you want to cry out, and then you got to watch yourself. What have you done? Like you really need to pause for a while. It's very hard to pause in that moment of time when you're actually getting angry with someone. So you get angry and then you realize and regret about how you reacted to the situation. So I think there's more stress and difficulty, as a householder.
Sure.
Whereas I find the spiritual persons, they're in a very nice environment. They've got everything served for them. I mean, even the students behave themselves. So that's how I see it as the person I am now.
Sure, sure. I mean, see, okay, both have pluses and minuses. That's
Can I add to that? Just what Rani said.
Yeah.
I think the roles that are put on us as householders, the mother, so you've got to act a certain way, or there's certain expectations as a mother that you've got to be a certain way. So there's sort of societies put these certain roles on a householder too. Like, if you yell because you're upset and your kids have done something naughty, then people can frown upon that. So there's certain things that people have to live up to in that role as well. I mean, I'm not saying everybody's a mother. Like some people are householders, they're not mothers and fathers. They've chosen different sort of life.
Sure. You're right. So in both cases, I would say that I wouldn't really call it which one's better or worse. It depends on the person. It depends on the environment. It depends on, your resources. Some may not have all the financial resources, so it makes it a very hard sannyasi life. Some of them may be, things may come up many years later. So they thought they were in a state of peace and everything was okay. But then suddenly your prarabdha keeps on running forward, and you come to this age and suddenly you're just unsettled for some reason. And you're like, this stage doesn't suit my role anymore. But now you're a sannyasi, right? So it's really something that you have to ongoingly, actively work through, no matter what role you take up. The point is, whatever role you take up, there are expectations, there are societal, stereotypes that we look upon, like Lorena has said. And so all of that, whichever way it is, you have to look at your life, your responses, where you stand, and make the most of it, so that you move through this journey, and you don't sort of go down in a way. So Krishna is just advising, look at yourself as this instrument, and use what you've got, no more, no less, because you don't have a different life. You've got the life that you have now. So instead of thinking, let me totally come out of this life and go to a different life, he says, no, look at your existing personality with the existing circumstances and make the most of that. Start building your life from where you are right now, instead of let's get rid of what I have and let's do something else. That's the art. Okay, so it's a great relief when you receive this, because you say, so there's no better anymore. The better starts by me simply taking the initiative to say, what now? What's next? What's the next logical step to make this existing life into a life that's worthy of living, so that I can, say at the last breath, I can say, are there any regrets? And you can say, no. Why are there no regrets? Because I have truly done what I could. Of course, I could have done more. Anyone could have done more. But you know what? I'm a human being. I get tired. Sometimes I just don't want to do things. So you can't kind of force yourself, and you realize all of these things, that you've done what you could, and you are now, you're living, what you can do in your small circle of influence. No more, no less. So this means the purpose of life doesn't have to be this grandiose thing. Like I have to be making huge impacts in the world, and people have to be smiling around me, and I have to bring people together, I have to like feel great every day. These are very unrealistic expectations that we put on ourselves as householders or sannyasis. So our own expectations become our pressures. So Krishna is here saying, look at your expectations. And while expectations can be good in some way because they move you forward, on the other hand, is it really worthwhile living with this pressure that you're putting on yourself? Like you need to perform, you need to never make mistakes. And if you do, then you're no good. So you look at all of this and you just let it go. And you say, what's next? What's the next logical step based on what is important to me, based on what I treasure, based on the values that I stand for? What now? And then you take that initiative. Okay. Otherwise, without that initiative, nothing happens. Now, suppose you do take that initiative. What's the end result of all of that? Verse 7. Yoga yukto vishuddhatma vijitatma jitendriyaha sarva bhutatma bhutatma urvannapina lipyate.
One whose mind is purified by being committed to a life of karma yoga, who has mastered the body and the sense organs, and who knows oneself to be the self in all beings, such a person is not affected, even while doing actions.
Thank you, Katie. One who knows oneself to be the self in all beings. Okay. After you have gone through this journey and the knowledge has taken place for you, then what is it that a wise person knows? Sarva bhuta atma bhuta atma. My truth is in the truth of all things. My truth and the truth of a mosquito, of Brahmaji, of a bird, of the 5 elements is one and the same. So there's no 2 different things. Now it says, is not affected. So that one who knows that my truth is the truth of all is not affected even while doing actions. Okay, so let's look at this a little bit. It deserves attention. Okay, so we all have a life to live and things to do. However, so does a wise person, okay, the one who knows their truth, but is not affected even while doing actions. How does a normal person say when something happens to them? Some result, they say, something has happened to me, right? Or I have done this, I've done this bad thing, I've lied, or I've done some good. And so pride or, self-esteem, whatever comes, depending on what you've done. So every action for the unwise becomes like a stain on your favorite shirt. Did you ever get that? You stained your favorite shirt or your pants? How did you feel in that moment? You abandoned everything you did and scrambled to get the destainer, put some toilet paper or whatever you had nearby. You totally got distracted. Now that shirt, your favorite shirt, is called your eye. So now every single action that you do and result that you receive stains that eye. And that eye is busy scrambling to clean itself up, to come back to the status of self-honor or self-dignity. And so all life is just cleaning up stains, and that's a very hard journey. Now, in the wake of knowledge, this staining is no more for you, even though your instrument continues to be stained. But you know clearly that it's like your shirt. Suppose you have 1,000 shirts, and one of them gets stained. How are you now? Are you still scrambling? Not so much, right? Suppose you have a whole warehouse of shirts, like 1 million shirts that were exactly the same, and one of them gets stained. They're all your favorites. You're not scrambling now, are you? You're relaxed. Okay? So in that same manner, your eye remains ever stainless. It's as if you have infinite amount of eyes, which are all, you. And so no matter what happens, you understand that the idea that I can stain someone, or I can, someone can stain me, that idea collapses. Why? Because there is no second to stain. There's no second shirt to be stained. Because what did he say? The one who knows oneself to be the self in all beings. You are the truth. There is only self. So there's no second thing which I can stain. And therefore, that second thing is now going to be the jury and the judge after one fine day, and it's going to say, you have stained me, buddy. Now let me send you to the appropriate places. And you're like, oh, no, help me. So there's no second person to whom you have to ask for permission to be taken to different places, because you are the truth of different places. You're the truth of time itself. So there's no future time in which you will suffer, because you are the self of time itself. So even though you now have this knowledge, what does your body keep doing and your mind? It keeps on functioning according to the existing storyline. That existing storyline is what we call your prarabdha karma. When you wake up, do you ever notice how you're in the middle of a story? You're in the middle of the story called your life. It's almost like there's always something going on, a new day. So every new morning is like a new birth. Exactly the same. Something is going on in your life. That something going on is called prarabdha. You're in the middle of a story that never began for the first time. And this is profound, because if you say you began, then you can say that you are responsible for all things. But if you look at it from a different stand and you say, there was never a time when I decided as a separate individual who said, I'm going to begin living in a human body. There was never a time when you did that. Why do you begin something? Suppose you want to begin a venture, a business, or you want to form a family. Why do you begin something? You say, because I have an intention to. I have a reason to begin something, don't you? So whenever you start something, there is a reason for that. And thereby, suppose you say, I'm going to start a venture or business, and that business starts to fail, or it starts to kind of go sidetracked. It's you move away from the mission statement. And then you say, the employees turn towards you and they say, you're the owner, you started this business, and it's deviating from its mission statement. What are you going to do? Because you're the owner, you started it. And you say, well, now that you brought it up, I'm going to sit down and rethink my strategy. And I say, fine, we need to rethink the strategy, because you are responsible for 1,000 employees. They all have families, and you're responsible. And you say, I am, because it's my company. Okay. So this means what you start, you're responsible for. But if you didn't start, if you find yourself in a story, one fine moment, and people come up to you and say, you are a bad person, you're responsible, you're kind of, you're full of sin and you've done bad things, it's your karma and you deserve it. And you say, that would only be true if I started this whole journey consciously, but I did not. Which means that there's a certain kind of responsibility that you do have to take in life, but at the same time, you have to let go of this idea that you are so responsible that it's all on you. Otherwise, it becomes a very heavy thing to bear, a lot of pressure that I'm the author of all results, of all things. That becomes a life of, lots of burden. So this means that because you're the self of all, you carry this knowledge, but at the same time, do not completely deny responsibility, because the world still, you still need to live. The one who knows oneself to be the self in all beings, in all things, that one is not affected by actions and by results. Okay. How did chapter 5 start? Arjuna asked the question, should I engage in action, or should I abandon action, go to the Himalaya? Interesting. So where is Arjuna coming from? Should I abandon action, or should I renounce all actions? So what's happening here for Arjuna? The burden of action is carrying. He's carrying the burden of being a doer, the burden of being responsible, the burden of, having to bear and make, so many decisions. So what he says is, because I am burdened by action, it would be perhaps a good idea to not do action. And what Krishna answers, he says, as long as you think that you're a doer, what you are holding burns you. It's like holding a hot piece of coal. It burns you. But when you let go of that idea, that the person that you are given, your name and your personality, is an instrument which is doing since beginningless time and will never stop doing, and is a character given to you for a time being, for 80 years or so, and you realize that you are the truth of all beings, not just the being that you're carrying right now, but of all beings, including this being and every being here in this seminar, this Zoom call, then at once you let go of this idea that you have to let go of actions. So in other words, what is true renunciation? Is it about stopping action or knowledge? That despite action, I remain free of the burdens of the one who's acting. So this means that as long as you believe that you're the doer, what happens? Complaints, I should be doing more, I don't like what I'm doing, I don't like the works that I'm assigned, this is, not for me, I should be doing something else. When you understand that your body and mind is made to do according to Ishvara's laws, which you never set up. You never decided to be the person who you are today. If you did, would you have not decided to be a much kind of a, more, a singer, maybe a dancer, a great thinker, philosopher, architect? Would you have not decided that if you truly were the decision maker? Of course, right? But how do you get born? You get born with limitation. You get born with maybe one attribute assigned to you. And then you say, oh, I don't like what I'm assigned. I want to now abandon and go to the mountains. Krishna says, look at what you have been given and realize that which you are given is what we call being a contributor in this world, in this universe. And that is the very thing that will make you evolve as a human being. While the human being is evolving, all the time I know that is, that human being is, is me, but I'm not that human being. I am much more than the human being. Okay? So it's not about abandoning or giving up action. It's recognizing despite action, I don't act. Despite thinking, I don't think. Despite blinking, I don't blink. Who thinks about that? Are you the blinker? Blink, blink. No, you've never blinked your whole life. You don't even think about blinking, do you? It's totally automatic. Same thing with thinking. Thinking is like blinking. You don't think. Thinking happens on its own based on a vast amount of causes that have made this person who they are today. Now, next verse will expand upon this and say, the wise person still acts in this world, but they don't get entangled by their acting. 8 and 9, Naiva kinchit karomiti, yukto manyeta tatvavita, pashyan shrinvan sprishan jigran, ashnan gachan swapan shwasan, pralapan visarjan grnan, unmishan nimishan napi, indriyan indriyarteshu, vartanta iti dharayan.
The one who is together, who knows the truth, thinks, I do not do anything at all, even while seeing, hearing, touching, smelling, eating, walking, sleeping, breathing, talking, releasing, grasping, opening, and closing the eyes. The person knowing fully well that the organs are engaged in their objects.
Imagine a pot, and there's a light inside the pot. And this pot has 9 apertures. And each aperture is a different size, like a different square or a circle, and a different size, one a big, one a small. How many lights are there? True lights. There's only one true light. Okay, the 9 apertures is also light, but there's only one light. And is the light conditioned by the aperture, the size of the aperture? Is the light actually taking on now the shape of the square or the circle or the size of that circle? Is it? I hope you can see this clearly, because there's one light, and from your standpoint, you see a square light, shining out. But actually, there's only one light originally, so no aperture conditions that one light. Okay. In that same manner, the light of consciousness is shining through your apertures. Your apertures are called your thoughts and emotions and memories. What ignorance is when you believe that the consciousness shining through your thought, which is a small thought, we usually have small thoughts, then that becomes I. And so now what you try to do is you then mistake the smallness of that I, which is as good as a thought, and then you try to make that bigger because you're not happy with this size. You want to make it maybe a star, a star, very pretty. You don't want just a square. And so what happens is you now want to make a big thought because you're not happy with consciousness obtaining in one single thought. Yeah. So this is why what happens is there's this idea where the person walks in this world with small thoughts. They're not very big thoughts. And they're looking for a spiritual experience. You see what they're doing? They're looking, trying to increase the size of the aperture. It's like the pot trying to find, make a big hole and make a ginormous hole in that pot. So in that same manner, the person wants now a big spiritual experience through which consciousness can shine so that they can get self-verification that I am much bigger than my usual small thoughts. And so they spend their life pursuing big apertures and prettier apertures. But according to the verse, every size of thought is only limited to its given size. It will never be, one limitless thought. And so the wise person doesn't go around trying to increase the quality of their thoughts, but they understand wherever there's a thought, however small my emotion is, whatever the size of that aperture is, maybe it's the size of a joy, maybe it's the size of a pain, size of suffering, size of worry, size of whatever it is, wherever there is a thought or emotion, that's exactly where that one original light of consciousness is. Thereby, the person in this manner is not preoccupied with trying to modify the size of their body because that's a bigger I, the size of their thoughts because that's a bigger I. They just simply understand wherever there is a thought, that's exactly where I am. If you go to the previous verse, one who knows oneself to be the self in all beings. If you replace that statement, the one who knows oneself to be the truth of all thoughts relinquishes the burden of trying to be a bigger thought. Because wherever there is a thought, what is the truth of that thought? What makes up the thought? What is the content of all your thoughts about yourself? It is consciousness. Understand? So this is the difference between an unwise person and a wise person. The unwise person is preoccupied with thoughts and ideas and bigger, we call this the crazy wisdom gurus, right? They're just amazing knowledge is pouring through, and it's giving them very validation that I am big. But Vedanta doesn't do this. Vedanta shows you no matter what small thoughts you have about yourself or about any time in the future or the present, that's exactly where the limitless I, the limitless consciousness is. It's like the example with the clay and the pot. Wherever there is a pot, that's your thought, that's exactly where the clay is. Okay, so we're not increasing the size of the pot, because even if you increase the pot, what will happen? What will happen then? You would then say, I'm used to this big pot. I want a bigger pot. You understand? So in other words, the human being never gets satisfied, as until it's limitless, you never get satisfied. You may get satisfied for a while, until you get used to it, and then you want a bigger idea about who you are. So the idea is not to make bigger ideas, but to see that all ideas are pervaded by you, consciousness. Shift is from forms into the content of all forms, and that content is you. So you don't have to go to Himalaya, Arjuna. You can stay right here and work with your thoughts, appreciate them, don't get entangled by them. Imagine there's a stage of people, actors, illumined by one light. And those actors, the absence and the presence of them is known in the presence of that one light. Now, suppose that you are one of those actors on the stage of the universe, and you've been acting for a long time. And this actor is made up of parts, like, arms are made to move, legs are made to walk, eyelids are meant to blink, throat is made to talk, brain is made to think and analyze, mind is meant to emote, whole body is meant to just move in this world. That person is given to you for a short amount of time. So what the analogy says is, can you stop that person from doing? Can you stop your eyes from blinking? Can you stop your arms from moving? Can you stop your brain from thinking? If you can't, what does that say about your brain and your mind? Did you make it? Did you design it? If you did, by definition, you should be able to switch it off whenever you want. You see this? If you cannot stop something, it is not who you are. You cannot stop your thoughts. It is not who you are. You cannot stop your emotions. It is not who you are. You cannot stop movement. It's not who you are. You cannot stop concern. It is not who you are. You cannot stop death. It is not who you are. You cannot stop birth of a new body. It is not who you are. You're not birth. You're not death. You're not, thinking. You're not emoting. You're not movement. What else can you not stop? Can you stop time? You can't stop time. It is not who you are. Okay, so whatever you cannot stop, it is, it's not your creation. That is called Ishvara's creation. So can you stop your body from being the person that they are? Whether they're a pleasant person or an unpleasant person at sometimes, no. So even the person that you're given is not who you are.
I've been thinking about this, and it seems like many times when we are thinking about I'm responsible for a thing or another thing, all we are responsible for is responsible for caring about it, but we don't have responsibility because Ishvara is actually doing it.
Yes, Ishvara is both the forms and the laws, which are, in the presence of whom this whole universe is, working and functioning. So every form is Ishvara. Every law that facilitates that form interacting with another form is also Ishvara. And your form is not excluded from Ishvara's forms. So even your form is not yours, because if it was yours, as I said, you would have selected it to be probably, a lot smarter and a lot, more handsome and so on. But it's not. So you were just given this body without any say on your parts, and it's born. You didn't decide when to get born, nor will you decide when death will happen. So there's no actual decision that you have in any part of your life. You don't decide when milk teeth will fall out, when puberty will kick in, what will happen in your overall life theme. You don't decide any of that. And so by understanding that, you come to see that there is some level of responsibility that you are given, but not this kind of total responsibility where I'm supposed to perform what we call, mind hacking nowadays. You hack your mind. You're like this machine operating totally, this is just putting your identity in the mind, right? So this means relax. Sometimes you just have to relax and recognize the person is given a limited amount of abilities, and there will never be more or less than that. And you have to just be okay with that. Yeah, so Ishvara is the manifester of all things, but it doesn't exclude you from relinquishing all your free will. There is some level of free will that you still have to.
Yes.
given.
Yeah, I was just thinking about the same thing, that not that I don't have free will, but like many times I was noticing that I'm thinking about I have responsibility for something when it's really I'm identifying with it. And so I'm like, okay, hey, I'm not responsible for it. I'm responsible for caring about people's feelings, but I'm not responsible for their feelings. So I was just thinking about that.
Yeah, as far as responsibility, you are responsible for how you think about what happens to you, but not what happens to you. Because that's where your choice is. Your choice lies in what you choose to, how you choose to see what happens to you, but not in what actually happens to you. Because if you had total control in what happens to you, then your whole day would be spent in bliss, wouldn't it? You would set up perfect variables so that everything works out, everyone loves you, everyone says hello to you, it's all just lovely. But no one has, even though we get up on stage and we talk about the law of attraction, building a life that you want and living to the fullest of your potential, how many of us have heard this? But actually, these people, with the respect that they, I give them, because I listen to many of them, if you just look at their life, they also have just an ordinary pet, an ordinary wife, ordinary husband, ordinary activities that everyone else does. And yet on stage, like, make your life huge, manifest whatever you want. It doesn't happen. Like, if you look at people's life, it doesn't happen, actually. You get a little bit. Sometimes most of the things that you want, you don't get. So, you have to kind of navigate yourself through that.
I want to clarify something very key, at least I felt you said, that choice I have is how to perceive what happens to me, not what happens to me.
Exactly. How you perceive, how you interpret, what you tell yourself about what has happened. For example, suppose a friend is walking and you say hello, but they just walk by and you know them. Now, see, you don't control that. You don't control whether they stopped or not. But where is your choice in that moment? Your choice is in
To
interpreting.
take offense or not.
Yeah, offense or not. You can say,
Right.
maybe they were so in their world, because usually people are in their world. They just didn't see me. Or you can say, they don't like me. I'm not loved. Yeah, you see, this person ignores me. That confirms that I'm not worthy of love. So that's up to you. And even if that is true, you can still turn the whole thing around by simply creating a different narrative, a different story, a different interpretation. You see, so you don't don't always have to be totally factual. Even if you suppose they say, they totally ignored you, and it's because they don't like you. Even then, you can say, they have the right to choose, but I'm still a lovely person. People love me. There are other people who love me. So you can that way introduce a different thought, and that's what Karma Yoga is about. Whatever happens to you becomes a chance for growth.
The way I practice this, I'm curious how this looks, because if I'm not my body, I tend to view it practically as I'm in some sort of relationship with my body. I'm relating to it. And the same, if I'm not my mind, I'm relating to it the same way that I'm relating to any other being, the same way that I'm relating to you. Like, it's this sort of living thing. It's automatic. It's the same way I relate to my dog. It's on this program. It's running its thing. My body's doing the same thing. So I have some sort of relationship to it. But I also recognize that, like, that's not entirely accurate in some way, because it's all appearing within my consciousness.
Yes.
So I'm trying to figure out in a practical way, is it inaccurate for me to say in some way that I am relating with this object?
It's accurate because you have to address the transactional world. And that is, at the transactional, you have to say, I do have a relationship. One wave has a relationship with another wave at the transactional level. But the wave's understanding is, despite the appearance having a transaction with another appearance, at the same time, the truth of both appearances, that is the waves, is the water. So this means that on one hand, you keep that knowledge, the paramarthika, the self in all beings. On the other hand, because your body is living in this world and there is an experience of the world, you have to also acknowledge there is a relationship that we are having with each other.
Perfect. Yeah.
But I'm not having a relationship with someone other than me, because it's like a wave having a relationship with another wave. On one hand, yes, the two waves are different. So I can acknowledge Nicholas is different from Andre. But on the other hand, I can also acknowledge that the truth of Nicholas and the truth of Andre is the one and the same consciousness.
Right. So the relationship exists in a transactional way within Mitya, but there's a higher truth beyond that.
There's a higher truth beyond that, which is a matter of cognitive knowledge.
Yes, just on the notion of responsibility, I've got this book here, which is The Subtle Art of Not Giving and I can't say the last word, by Mark Manson. And there's a line in that where he says, with great responsibility comes great power. So he's flipped the notion of with great power comes great responsibility. And it's just a life-changing practice that you are just responsible for every emotion that you have, whether you were at fault for that circumstance or not. It doesn't matter. You take responsibility for everything that's going on in your life.
So who's a wise person in this verse? They're a yukta. Yukta means someone that is together. What does it mean to say a person is together?
Not shaken by turbulence and things going on around them and experiences that might be unsettling and something that could be taken personally, and how you affect other people in your actions too.
What about not shaken by two kinds of opposing thoughts? Is the glass half full or is it half empty? Oh, it's half empty. No, it's half full. No, it's actually both. It depends on what standpoint you're looking at it from. So this means that, you see, sometimes you need to keep your glass acknowledge that it's half empty. Why? Because if you don't acknowledge your life is half empty, you're not going to have any motivation to fix it. But at the same time, if you totally neglect that your life is half full, then all joy goes out of life. So this means you have to have both in your life, half full and half empty. That's called objectivity.
Well, along the lines of what you were just saying, high level of capacity, especially capacity for holding nuance, non-binary thinking.
Yeah. To hold nuances, to look at your narratives from different standpoints.
I feel the word yukta means the body or the consciousness endowed with the body, mind, intellect. If you think you are only body, mind, and intellect, it is not adequate. If you think you are only consciousness, that is also not adequate. It is a union or between the two that's what means yukta. That's my understanding.
Okay, that's a very good understanding, actually. It's bring the ability to bring different puzzles, different pieces of the puzzle together and make sure that they all make sense. They're all well connected and nothing's out of place. And you know how, one view can be right. Like Nicholas has brought up, on one hand, I do have a transaction with you, but on the other hand, all there is here is one without a second. So now they can, if you just stick with the latter, you can then say, how can I be having transaction with you if there's only self? But then you say, well, it's possible because at a transactional level, there is a person, there is a body and a mind that you have to address. So your knowledge is well put together. You have put all the parts of Vedanta through listening, and you're able to hold it together. And that framework allows you to reinterpret the world in the light of that framework. Whereas before Vedanta, you were interpreting the world how? Into parts. It's like this, but then you neglect. It's like you ask a psychologist, what's the secret of life? What does the psychologist tell you? Clean mind. You ask a physiologist, what's the secret of life? What do they say to you? Strong, healthy limbs and pranayama. You ask a spiritualist, what's the secret of life? Connection with God, right? You ask somebody else. And so everyone's going to have their own different opinion. And you can now argue, though they're all right, like looking at an elephant, one is a tusk, one is a trunk, one is a stomach, but they're not seeing the total. So when you look at life through all perspectives, then you can say, I am together. My knowledge is together. I as a person am together. Where I'm operating from is not one standpoint, but it's from different possibilities at once, because I've thought it through well enough that I'm able to bring possibilities in one moment. And they're also a tattva vit. Tattva vit is a knower of the truth. So now if you think about it, can you be a knower of the truth if you're not together? Because if you go back, what is the truth? The one who knows oneself is the self of all, that one is wise. So if I exclude some things and I'm not in other things and I'm in other things, then I'm not together. I'm still dividing reality. So this means to be together, if the mind is scattered and all kind of, dividing things into to dozens of pieces, like the Christians, they're there, the Muslims, they're there, and they're over there. And so I'm sort of putting things, in categories. I'm not together. You see, I'm being selective. What is Advaita Vedanta? It is about accommodating everything, seeing where things belong. Is Krishna giving us a mandate? By the way, you should not think of yourself as a doer. Is this what he's doing? From now on, don't think of yourself as a doer. That's not what Krishna is doing. He's saying that the one who is yukta and a tattvavit, spontaneously for them, they are knowing themselves to be not a doer. From now on, my dear, do not think of yourself as a doer. Is that what we're saying? Not at all. It's a natural understanding that unfolds as you go through the teaching. How can I become comfortable with this understanding that despite doing, I am not a doer? Despite results, I am never tainted by the results. So that's a fact. But suppose it's not a fact for you. It's just an intellectual understanding. So Krishna is going to give us a metaphor how to start thinking like that to prime your mind. In this verse 10, Brahmanya dhaya karmani sangam tyaktva karotiyaha lipyate nasapapena padma patram ivambhasa.
The one who performs actions, giving up attachment, offering one's actions unto Brahman, is not affected by sin, just as the leaf of a lotus is not wetted by water.
Thank you, Bhuvana. So I'm going to focus on not affected by sin, just as the leaf of a lotus. And that's a nice imagery. I call it having a Teflon mind. So imagine a lotus, which is blooming in the middle of a, like a stagnant, muddy pond. And it's surrounded by dirt. It's surrounded by other plants, of course. But it is, if you look at it, it's strikingly pure and almost very pleasing to see. It's white and clean. And you say, what's the secret of this lotus flower? How is it able to stand there without absorbing the mud and the water? And you say, well, it's got an amazing it's got a special kind of skin that just lets everything slide off. So does this lotus flower wait for the pond to become clean so that the lotus can start to bloom and shine its glory? Is it waiting there? Or is it just growing, being itself, exactly where it is, and despite being surrounded by the mud, the mud of life, like Arjuna, he's in great mud now. He is in literal mud on the battlefield, but also psychological mud. And suppose Arjuna is now waiting. Is that what Krishna is saying? You need to wait for the situation to absolve, to become better, and then you can blossom and you can shine like a lotus flower. Is that how modern life is? How long will you be waiting for things to become perfect? For that pond to settle? When things are still and everything just falls to the bottom. Does that ever happen, truly? Maybe like momentarily, like a day or two, but not for too long. So it's an appropriate metaphor for life, if you think about it. We spend our whole lives waiting for the mud to settle, don't we? For the right person to come, for the kids to finally become some people that I can, as a parent, be happy about, for things to work out. This is how we go about life. We wait for situations, don't we? Okay. So the verse then says, you learn to bloom amidst the Kurukshetra. And you say, okay, so is this then positive thinking? Is Krishna advising us to convert the mud into chocolate? That's positive thinking. Or to say that the mud is not there? He's not saying that. He's saying there is mud. Arjuna, you are in this situation. When are you not in this situation? And he's saying that we're not trying to create a false positive thinking, because positive thinking is embellishing the mud. You're just acknowledging there is mud. What now? What is the best way to deal with where I'm at in this moment? Like I said, what does it mean to see things as they are? The glass is neither half full, nor is it just half empty. It is both. And when it's both, that's when you can make the right decisions. Unless I see the glass is half full and half empty, then I can say, okay, in this manner, it is half full. In this manner, it's half empty. That means the amount of decisions that you can make is only as good as your objectivity towards life. The more I see, the wider angle that I can see, the more decisions I can make. The smaller my angle, possibilities, the smaller decisions I can make. So in this manner, what is it that makes you then wet? If you go the opposite direction, what makes us wet? Because lotus flower has taught us it doesn't get wet, nor does it absorb the mud. What makes you absorb the mud?
Having non-binding desires.
Having non-binding desires. And would you like to explain for us, Ravi, or someone can contribute? What is the difference between a binding desire and a non-binding desire?
Sort of too much passion on the result rather than your own action at that moment.
Okay, so too much.
Yeah, caring about the outcome too much rather than your actual action or service or choice at that moment.
Okay, very good. So in other words, you're too much invested in something going your way, and that makes you extremely anxious over whether you will succeed or not. Dayananda calls this things coming under your skin.
Keep bringing the teaching in life, like keep bringing whatever you're learning in your day-to-day activity. I think that's the best way, and keep saying that it's the body and the mind acting, but you're just witnessing this Sakshi Bhava.
Okay. So in other words, it gives you a shock absorber towards life, and it gives you a certain space to think, and you're not so kind of caught up in things that are happening to your body and mind.
One thing for me is the teaching that Nima highly recommends is of the infallible order. So understanding that there are causes and effects, and causes and effects that have led to that moment and that situation. And even there's an infallible order about if something has gotten to you, and that's because of causes and effects as well. So you might be tired or whatever, and something that's got through to you,
True. So this is very good. The infallible order. This means that wherever you're at, it's not a random occurrence. It's really just a series of things that happened before, and you were not there watching them happening, and you have to arrive to your work, and whether you're late or not, you don't really have the entire control over that. So in other words, you can convert your relationship from an owner into a manager. What's the difference between being a manager and an owner? See, a manager manages things, and they manage your body and mind. They manage their emotions. They manage people. But they also know that at any one moment, suppose you're managing 10 people at once, are they always going to comply and do their perfect work every time, even though they're brilliant in their fields? No. So the manager has to know this. So this means the manager, on one hand, isn't too invested in the outcome going their way, because they know that though I only have limited time, I am managing my resources and so on. But at the same time, I cannot have this, this pressure that is going to work out perfectly every time. And if it doesn't work out, fine, then we'll make some course adjustments and then we'll try again. So this means changing your relationship from being an owner into a manager of your body and mind.
I wanted to add that if we know or if we believe that there is a larger plan in action, I can do whatever I wish to, what I think is right. but there is a larger plan in action. There is a person or a body or an entity which is planning in a better way, in a larger way, on a wider canvas. So overall things will happen as per that plan, as per that planner. And what we do, let us do what we can. But in any case, what will happen is what is destined, maybe.
Yeah, so this is very similar to the infallible order, where though you can do as much as you can, still you're not the only participant in this universe. There are other people whose actions are also intercepting your own results. And all of that is somehow turning out into the world that we live in today. So this means you can sort of let go of this idea, this total, pressure that things need to work out my way, because they will work out somehow. And whatever they work out, where is my level of control or my choice? It's in how I choose to see what happens. Now, the next verse is going to talk about methods. So if you're making your mind, like Teflon, or your life like Teflon, then how do we make our minds more, resilient and to life's impacts? And so this will be verse 11. Kayena manasa buddhya Kevalair indriyairapi yoginah karma kurbanti sangam tyaktvatma shuddhaye.
Giving up attachment, karma yogins perform action purely, without being impelled by likes and dislikes, with the body, mind, intellect, and also by the senses, for the purification of the mind.
So I'm going to rename this into how do you live a life so that you can never lose? That you're always a winner. Okay. How do you then become a loser? Let's ask that, and we'll go the opposite. How do you become a way where life becomes very hard for you? And it's very simple. So I'll ask the question again. How do you make life hard? It depends on your purpose. If your purpose is external accomplishments, then it will be pressure to attain them. But even if you attain them, which is a lot of hard work, where's the pressure then? In maintaining them, and also the amount of time you spend in maintaining them. Therefore, you have to now sacrifice, losing out on other things. So no matter how you look at it, as long as your purpose is external accomplishments, which is healthy, but when it is external, then you're really setting yourself up for fear of losing it, the constant anxiety of having to get it and to maintain it. But what if, instead of depending on things going your way, what if you can shift that into turning life into whatever happens, it will be there to help me evolve, and so that I become less agitated by it. What if everything that you have in your life is now a tool to help you become more resilient towards it next time, a little more equanimous towards it? So there are methods to do this, and Krishna gives 4 methods through which this is done. First is body. So let's look at your body. How do you change your relationship to the body? Now, some of these methods may work for you. Some of them you may not resonate with, but I'm just going to share, my top methods, and you can take them down. The first is converting the relationship from an owner into a trustee. Like we said, from an owner into a manager, where you are given a body to manage, but you also know it is never yours to begin with. Now, has anyone ever given you a gift? Suppose you give me a gift. Look at this. And I open the gift and I say, oh, it's too small. It's too old. You should have got it from that place and not this place. Why is it packed like this? You should have put this wrap on. Would you appreciate that? Suppose I started judging the gift that you gave me, and I start kind of, you might be nice towards me, but inside, you're just going to never give me a gift again. So this is exactly what we do towards our bodies. Your body is a gift from Ishvara. And then we look at this body and we engage in what's called body shaming. I'm like this, I'm not attractive. I'm not like, that handsome. I'm not, I should be more like that. So in other words, you're given a body that's really there to help you move through this journey, but you're now making a whole purpose of life about that very gift. So that becomes a disrespect of the gift that you're given. So this means we change the relationship from body shaming into body appreciation. Thank you, Ishvara, for endowing me with this body. I could have gotten I could have gotten the body of a dog. Would anyone like that? Would you like a dog body? If no, then be happy with the body you've got now. The second is changing your purpose in reference to your body from appearance into capability. As long as the vision of the body is about appearance, such as, measuring it, how it should be against other ideals, are you ever really going to find happiness with your body? Because there's always someone going to be thinner, whatever, taller, skin is going to be healthier, shinier, right? There's always someone going to be like that. So as long as my image is in the body appearance, there is just no way I will find that in my life, that happiness. So what you do is you convert that into what is the function of my body. So you ask the question like, is my body able to move me through the day? Is it? Yes. Notice how that changes how you feel about your body versus, are you a supermodel right now? No. So we don't want that. But if I ask you, is your body capable of performing your swadharma? You say yes. Is your body able to get you through the day? Yes. Is your body able to move you from A to B, to those places that you care about? Yes. Is your body able to do a little bit of dance? Yes. You're like, wow, I've got so much capability in my body. So you start to feel better about it in that way. The third is healthy movement. It is proven that small movements or postures act as a mild antidepressant and also lift your mood up. Anyone who walks a little bit or some exercise, it can go a long way to keep you emotionally healthy. So emotions isn't always about the mind, it's also about the physical body. It's a mind-body connection. So you can change your posture and a little bit of movement that is healthy. So these are the three things for the body. Your senses report data, don't they? That's all they do. Open eyes, reports. Ears open, reports. Can you do anything against that? No, they're just made to report data. Your senses are only as good as what your mind's purpose is. If your mind's purpose is looking for separation in this world, then your eyes will be open and they will seek witness to competition, to lack, to difference. If you change your mind's purpose into looking for divinity, the whole purpose of life is divinity, then your senses will serve that. When you open your eyes, what will you see now? You will see proof of divinity through sights, through sounds, through things that you see. So your senses are only as good as the aim or purpose of your mind. Change the purpose of your mind and your senses automatically follow. Then there is Dhamma. Dhammaha in Sanskrit means because your senses are always open, what you do is you deliberately expose them to those parts that you cherish or value. More to that and less, maybe 5 minutes less to things that are not so, consequential. After your senses report data, what you do with that data, that's called Shama in Sanskrit. So how you think about what is being reported, how you interpret it, that's called Shamaha. That's also something that is given to you. When it comes to the mind, you see, everyone has narratives that they keep playing in their mind. And they can be such as from childhood, like, I don't love right, or I'm not loved in the right manner, or people don't like me, or I'm not good enough, I don't deserve. These are all things that we pick up from childhood, especially. And what happens is the more you repeat that, the more it becomes a normal thing for you. Now, what you can do is it's never too late. You can at once introduce, when you catch yourself saying that, introduce a new thought and say, actually, I have value to give in this world. Actually, I am precious. Every time you interpret or intercept a thought like that, that's not empowering, it already starts to cancel out that long storyline that you've been telling yourself. So it's never too late to start changing the stories that you tell yourself. Another technique is whenever you have a thought that's ruminating on you and it doesn't want to let you go, like a song that you cannot leave from your mind. How do you get rid of a song that you can't eliminate? from your mind. Keeps on replaying. When you are ruminating on anything, what you do is you write it down. There's something about writing things down that it reduces the power, the emotional power in the mind. Write it down, whether it's with a hand or on your phone. The idea is put it down. When you put it down, it already takes the power away from the mind. The third is reinterpret. What happens to you is not entirely in your control, but the choice that you have after what happens to you, that is entirely given to you. So what happens to you is what happened to you. But now, what choices, how will you see what has happened to you? How will you interpret that? What would that mean for you? That is your choice. It can either mean that it was a lesson, a good lesson that you needed. It can mean that it was a punishment from divinity and you're not good enough. It can mean that it's your prarabdha karma. It can mean anything. It's up to you. So you can either make every single moment that happens to you a thing that puts you down or a thing that becomes your kind of a guardian angel, something that uplifts you. That is entirely in your hands. Thereby, it's not what happens to you, but what you do with what happens to you, what you think with what happens to you. Okay? And then intellect. The first one is giving your buddhi a mini goal. See, the way that the buddhi works, the way that you get motivated. Did you ever notice how there are times or days where your energy slumps, it goes down? Why is that? There are two reasons for that. The first is because you're not giving your buddhi what it needs. And your buddhi needs a fuel. The fuel is called a mini goal. Unless the buddhi is given some aim, some direction for the day, it doesn't matter what it is. Cook a meal, exercise for 5 minutes. It has to be specific. That specificity is what gives your intellect the energy. And that's how you feel energized. The second is also backed by science. It's called if and then planning. And I would probably consider this strongly because it works really well. This means that if I do X, then I will immediately do Y. So for instance, suppose you say, if I check my phone while working, then I will immediately put it in my drawer. Your intellect likes that. It likes to be given a challenge. If I start to have resentful thoughts about that person, then I will wish them well. This works really good for your buddhi because it gives it like a game, like, I've done this, therefore I need to now do that, try that. If X, then Y. A third idea is creating a sense of urgency. See, there's something called social facilitation. I noticed this in myself, and I want to ask you, this is the same for you. I notice when I go to dancing classes, I cannot remember anything. It's just the hardest thing to remember. Like I'm totally clumsy. You know, simple moves do not work for me at all. All I want to do is just go home and do it on my own. Does anyone else have that? However, those things that you do know, it's almost like you're so much better in it in public. You may be at home like, oh, I can't really speak that well. But when you actually speak in the public to people, so much good things come out of you that you could never do on your own. Did you also notice this about yourself? So there's this whole idea in science that says when you are put in a social situation, those things that you are good at, they tend to flourish in you. You become so much better at them. Whereas those things that you're not good at, because of that social pressure, you become extremely clumsy at them. So now what you do is the way to recreate this for yourself, this kind of brilliance, when you come to an environment and you're just brilliant, that you could never be on your own, the way to recreate this is by giving yourself a sense of urgency. Because a sense of urgency, like I will finish this within 20 minutes. If I don't, then right, I have to do it tomorrow. It focuses your concentration to a single point and it fades everything else out, which is why sometimes it's easier to work with people around you when there's pressure than by yourself. Did you notice that too? The question is, how do you replicate that kind of focus when you're on your own? The answer is by creating urgency. So next week, another way to act or be like this lotus sleeve is through karma yoga. Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnam Eva Avashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.